let me drive the car, and I saw Larry Doby, who was here for spring training, and he waved. I remember that all these years. So I think there's something about that's very special about baseball. My 90-year-old, my friend's 90-year-old mother was selected by the Times and the Rays to, and they went to her home, had her picked up by a limousine and taken to the game because she was a Rays fan. Now that was maybe, no, she was 98 when that happened, but she listened to the Rays game on radio. That's how committed she was. Those are just examples of how important I think it is. I think it needs to happen. I know that there are several financial issues that are probably I'm not as astute on, but I'm sure those...
Many of those panelists talking about the importance, trying to bring baseball back, keeping baseball in St. Petersburg in some form there. But as we have discussed many times, as this saga has drawn on, still a lot of questions about that. We're actually going to talk with Colleen in our 2 o'clock hour here on Fox Local, so we hope you join us for Florida Live coming up.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Hope you're having a good day as we are now about halfway through the work week. But we are just getting started here on Florida Live. I have a lot of ground to cover over the next hour with you. I want to let you know some of what you can expect coming up in our show today. Coming up later, we are going to examine some of the questions that still exist over the future of the Tropicana Field site and the historic gas plant district, as well as questions abound about the future of the Tampa Bay Rays and where they might end up, where they might play. We're going to talk with Colleen Wright, St. Petersburg reporter with the Tampa Bay Times, who hosted and moderated a panel discussion on that very issue last night. In our Tampa Connection coming up in about 10 minutes, we're going to talk with Nancy about how teenage drug dealers can now be charged with murder for fatal overdoses. Case of that in Hillsborough County. We're going to hear from the sheriff coming up in a few minutes. But we begin this afternoon with an update in a St. Lucie County fatal exorcism. This is a story that first broke on Friday night. We now know, according to the sheriff's office, that preliminary autopsy results, quote, do not refute the mother's account of what happened. Suspect is the mother accused of killing her 6-year-old child. Suspect Rhonda Paulynice accused of killing 6-year-old Pierre. She, according to the sheriff, told detectives that she was trying to release his demons. Investigators believe that boy was killed back on May 18th, but he was not found until May 30th, when deputies went out there to conduct a welfare check after getting a call from his school. Now, the sheriff, Richard Del Toro, held a news conference on Friday to give the initial details about this. That's what I'm going to play for you. But again, keep in mind the update here is that the preliminary autopsy so far does not contradict the story that he tells as far as what they heard from the mother.
School resource deputies requested a welfare check for a student who had been absent from school since May 14th of 2025. The student identified as Ramil Pierre, and I'll spell that. It's R-A''MYL, Pierre, P-I-E-R-R-E, 6 years old, who attended Samuel Gaines Academy. A road patrol deputy was dispatched and arrived at the scene at approximately 10:04 a.m. at the 2500 block of Bedford Drive, Fort Pierce, Florida. And upon arrival, the deputy made contact with the child's mother in the driveway of the residence. She's identified and is our suspect, Rhonda Paulynice, and that's spelled Paulynice, 31 of Fort Pierce, Florida. The mother escorted the deputy into the home, into the child's bedroom, where the child was discovered deceased, lying on his bed. The residence was immediately secured. Detectives responded to the scene, with the first detective arriving at approximately 10:15 a.m. He was in very close proximity to the residence. Fire rescue was also called to the scene due to concerns about a possible gas leak, but after a thorough assessment, fire rescue determined there was no gas leak present in the home. The medical examiner's office arrived at approximately 3:10 p.m. following a search warrant being executed at the residence and conducted a preliminary investigation. At that time, the manner of death could not be determined on site. An autopsy is scheduled tomorrow to assist in determining the cause and manner of death. And the investigation is continuing with the interview of the mother here at the Sheriff's Office in our Criminal Investigations Division. During the course of the interviews, our detectives learned that the mother last spoke to the child on May 18th. That's when we believe the homicide occurred, and that she was responsible for the child's death. She's being charged tonight with second-degree murder and also failure to report a death, and for also altering the body after the deceased. What we did learn in speaking with the mother is she believes she was being told by God to basically exorcise demons out of the child's body. And when the child had stopped moving and basically passed away, at that point she felt the child had been released of those demons and was waiting for him to basically come back at that time. So that's where we are right now. I'll handle any questions anybody may have. So any questions?
Sharon, does she show any remorse that her son's dead and all this happening and unfolding?
So from what I learned from talking to some people that were involved in the investigation, I have not spoke to the mother myself. What we do know, though, is that she had a lot of highs and lows during the investigation, you know, from laughing at different times at the scene to crying, you know. So, like I said, a lot of different ends of the spectrum.
Have police responded to that house prior? DCF ever been called? Prior history?
So we have responded to that house in the past, nothing involving the mother and the child. We last went to the house for a rescue run on the 17th, the day before we believe the child was killed. And that was for basically a medical issue she was having. And there have been some domestic issues in the past, all the way back to January, involving the mother and a sister who once lived at the home. So, but nothing involving the child that would lead us to where we're at today.
Any idea what the child has been doing so long as he's been in school until the time he passed away? Is he just home the whole time?
We believe he was, and again, this is going to be confirmed through the autopsy, and we have to wait for those facts, but we believe he has been dead since the 18th and just been in his room since that time.
Who else lives at the home?
I believe just the mother and the son.
Any idea where dad is?
No, I do not.
You mentioned she's also being charged with altering the body. Can you give details about that? What was done or anything like that?
Just the way I believe she was preserving the body at that point. So, and again, I want to try to give as much as I can without jeopardizing the investigation in terms of what, you know, we still have to confirm some things, corroborate some things with the medical examiner's office tomorrow after the autopsy. But based on what we know right now, we feel very confident in this charge.
And there was no, I mean, you mentioned she was trying to exorcise demons out of the child or whatever it was. There was no strangling, no like signs of bruising or anything like that on the child? Or I don't know if you could mention that. But.
Well, you got to remember this happened close to, 12 days ago, we believe. So the body's in a different state than it is if it was just had happened. So we're going to have to wait to see what happens with the medical examiner.
She'll make first appearance tomorrow morning?
Yes.
I know that your deputies, your investigators are all professionals, but a lot of them are also parents.
Yes.
How
This is very difficult. Our deputies see things that nobody should have to see. And this is one of the struggles we deal with in law enforcement, where we're expected to get everything perfect all the time. We're not robots, we're human beings. We just have the honor and privilege of serving this community, enforcing the laws. But we get exposed to a great deal of trauma in this job. And that trauma can have lasting effects on you. And that's why it's so important that we make sure that we get our deputies and police officers and other first responders like firefighters, state attorneys who come to scenes, different things like that, and get them the counseling that they need so they can continue to live productive lives. Because I can tell you throughout my career, I've seen things that have affected me, and that counseling wasn't available back then. Luckily I've taken advantage of some things to help me through those things. But being a parent, being out at a scene like that, seeing a 6-year-old child that was killed for no other reasons other than just someone being purely evil, and it's hard. It's hard to just go home and act like nothing's happened and sit down for dinner with your spouse and your children. It does have an effect on you. So my heart goes out, and my thankfulness and gratitude goes out to the deputies and the detectives that responded out there today. I want to express our sincere condolences to the entire family who loved this child. Our sincere condolences and thoughts and prayers are also with all of his classmates and his teachers and the faculty and staff at the school district. From what I understand, this kid just lit the room up and was just loved by everybody. And so they're all going to be having a very difficult time getting through this. But this is the first steps we got to take to make sure we dot the I's, cross the T's, and justice gets done in this case, and then we can heal from there.
And that was the sheriff talking through the details of this case on Friday. This is the suspect, Rhonda Paulynice, who is facing multiple charges, including murder in this case. And again, just to follow up this with the latest in this case from the sheriff, saying the medical examiner's investigation is still ongoing. They do expect more analyses, toxicology tests as well, still pending. You see his statement there. We remain committed to uncovering the full truth about what happened. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we will be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, good to see you this afternoon.
It's good to see you too, Garrett. Beginning July 1st, juveniles who deal drugs that lead to a deadly overdose can actually be charged with murder. Now, Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister says he worked with Governor Ron DeSantis to make this bill become a law, and this became important to him after 17-year-old Devin Ramos died after taking a fentanyl-laced pill. He actually died 1 year ago yesterday. Now, that pill was given to him by another 17-year-old. The sheriff held a press conference this morning along with Ramos's mother, and Chad Chronister said that this case infuriated him because he felt the 17-year-old who gave Ramos that fentanyl-laced pill was not being held accountable for his actions.
If he had used a gun, a knife, or by any other means to take someone's life, he would have faced murder charges and severe consequences for his actions. But poisoning someone with fentanyl, the law made a distinction, and this dealer, simply because he was a juvenile, could not be held accountable.
Under this law, anyone who is under the age of 18 who deals drugs that leads to a deadly overdose can be prosecuted for third-degree murder. Third-degree murder is a second-degree felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Ramos's mother did join the sheriff this morning for that press conference, and she said that she feels that she is at peace now and that she feels that her son's death was not in vain. She also wants parents to pay more attention to what their kids are doing in the hopes of preventing tragedies in the future.
No, I never thought that I would ever go through this. I've seen other families go through this, and I always said that this would never be me, that I would never have to experience this. But I did, and it's real. And what I want to say to other families is get close to your kids, be nosy, get in their business, make sure they know about God, you know, keep them close to you and keep them away from the streets.
Now, Hillsborough State Attorney Susie Lopez also attended today's press conference, and she said in Hillsborough County, you will not get a pass just because of your age. Again, this law takes effect July 1st. Garrett?
All right, Nancy, thank you. Story number 2 today, and that is some big allegations against Big Storm Brewing.
Yeah, that's right. We've actually been following this story for a while now, and as you mentioned, there are more allegations against Leo Gavoni. Now, he is the Pinellas County businessman who is also accused of stealing $100 million from the trust funds of disabled clients. Now, another investor has come forward claiming that Gavoni, as well as his son, Leo Gavoni Jr., used their Clearwater Craft Brewery as a front to misappropriate funds. Now, in a lawsuit filed last week in Hillsborough County, Ralph Dialeo Jr. demanded he be paid back $600,000 for a loan he made to the father and son back in 2021. He said that he was approached about an opportunity for him to lend money to expand Big Storm's Fat Point Brewing brand. The court documents allege that money was not used for the brewery. Instead, he claims that it was used for their own personal use and he was never paid back. He also claims that Gavoni Sr. offered to pay him $17,000 and renegotiated extended terms. However, the lawsuit claims more than $700,000 in principal and in interest is still owed for the loan. Leo Gavoni Sr. is the founder of the Center for Special Needs Trust. That's a nonprofit that handled trust funds for people with disabilities. The center filed for bankruptcy more than a year ago after discovering it was missing $100 million. Now, Gavoni is accused of taking funds in the form of loans over a 10-year period for himself and at least one other company that he owns. That money was supposed to go to families caring for loved ones with disabilities. A judge previously found Gavoni liable for the $100 million plus an additional $20 million in interest. Last month, a court ordered Gavoni to hand over financial records for Big Storm Brewing, and earlier this year, control of Big Storm and numerous other businesses linked to Gavoni was handed to court-appointed officials. There is still a question, though, however, of where this money is. Leo Gavoni Jr. was listed as a co-conspirator in the lawsuit. The plaintiff alleges that he was involved in the initial discussions about the loan. Neither the father nor the son responded to our questions for comment, and Big Storm Brewing has also not responded. Garrett?
And Nancy, that is a big question of where that money is now.
Yes, that's definitely a lot of money to go missing. And also this money was meant to help families take care of their loved ones who have special needs. So to not know where that money is really terrible, and it's just astonishing. These families, they need this money to help care for their loved ones.
Yeah. And finally, Nancy, here in our Tampa Connection, animal abuse arrest in Polk County.
Yeah, that's right. 5 people in Polk County have been arrested for animal abuse. Officials say that they got a tip about 2 horses that appeared to be malnourished in a field on Poe Road. And when investigators went to the property on Sunday, they said they found 11 horses, 8 goats, and 2 sheep. Unfortunately, one of those horses was dead. Deputies said that they also found piles of solid waste, including rotting household trash, along with scrap metal, waste wood, 23 tires, hundreds of flies, and broken appliances were also scattered throughout the property. Investigators said that they also found a trough filled with a mixture of antifreeze and gasoline, and they said that was leaking into the water that the animals were drinking. Deputies said 40-year-old Joe Manuel Nunez Suarez claimed he was taking care of the animals for a friend, and he claimed that he had asked that friend to pick up the livestock 3 months ago because it was too expensive to feed them. He was arrested for felony animal cruelty, misdemeanor animal cruelty, and confining animals without proper food, care, or sustenance. 4 other adults were also found on this property, and they are now facing various charges. Deputies say there were also children living with adults in various structures on the property, but as of right now, it is not clear who is taking care of them. And Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said that he appreciates the tipster who reported the animals in the first place, and he vows to make it so that the suspects can never own animals again. Garrett?
You always hate hearing about cases like this. I want to show one more clip of video here, and this is one that the sheriff's office also shared of Thunder, who was a 2-year-old stallion that they say was owned by one of these suspects and had been kept in a small stall in a dark barn, never turned out to pasture until now. And you can certainly see they seem definitely much happier getting to know, being outside, seeing daylight, seeing that grass and that kind of thing. So, for the animals that survived this, certainly brighter days ahead.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you can see just in that video how happy this horse is, and think of the great life that he's going to have now that he was rescued.
All right. Well, Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. This week, Senator Ashley Moody spoke on Capitol Hill. She was commemorating the 100-year anniversary of a Supreme Court decision that she says stood up for parental rights in education. Pierce versus Society of Sisters, and in that case, the Supreme Court of the United States struck down an Oregon state law that forced all children to attend public schools. In the interpretation is that further the right of parents to control their children's education without state interference. That's what Senator Moody spoke about yesterday on Capitol Hill, joined by members of some other groups, including Moms for Liberty.
Well, hello, it's great to see everyone that is here today to celebrate some historic landmark cases in our nation's history, especially as it relates to the education and well-being of our children. It is so important that we as citizens remain engaged in policy making, even with those who don't agree with us on all of the issues, so that we may continue to develop meaningful access and education for all students, regardless of economic background or circumstances. I want to thank Secretary of Education Linda McMahon for being here today and helping us celebrate this important landmark decision, and Moms for Liberty, Alliance Defending Freedom, and Defending Education, who are helping us celebrate today. Over 100 years ago, the Supreme Court's decision in Pierce versus Society of Sisters set a vital precedent in American education. And its ruling protected parents' rights to choose how and where their children would be educated, affirming that parents made that decision, not the state. And that continues to be a topic and an ideal in which we hold true as policymakers and parents and Americans. It is so important that we keep having these discussions and abiding by these prior precedents, because as you see, even today, education, raising responsible children with moral standards has never been more important. Today, we see education evolving rapidly. The needs of students are diverse and complex, and the traditional one-size-fits-all model in public schooling many times will fall short, and families need real choices, and whether that means access to private schools, tutoring, special needs services, or innovative educational technology. Right now, I'm a co-sponsor of a bill called Educational Choice for Children Act. It is a legislation that would implement a federal tax credit scholarship program that empowers parents by helping as many 2 million students across the country access schools and services that best fit their unique needs. We don't want children to be locked into an education just because they live in a certain zip code. Parents need to be able to seek out and find education based on their needs and their circumstances. The ECCA is funded by private donations. It does not use federal spending. And this is being addressed right now in the big, beautiful bill, and we're hoping that the Senate continues to support this. I'm urging all of my colleagues to do so. It should not be an either-or debate between public schools or alternatives. It must be about expanding opportunity for all children. So I am excited here today to celebrate this historic milestone, to stand with some really strong ladies. I promise we invited some men, but we have some really strong moms up here who continue to want to be a part of this discussion, because moving forward, as you can see, the future of not just our children, but indeed the strength of this country is going to depend on the education and the access we provide to them. Today is a great example of how we should all move together in a productive way, talking about these issues, how we can do better and serve our children, expand their access, deliver better education. And that's why me and all these moms up here will keep showing up, having these difficult conversations to make sure education is truly available to all children.
And you also saw Linda McMahon, the Education Secretary, U.S. Education Secretary, over Senator Moody's shoulder there, who was also at that event. One other quick note here before we go to break. A federal judge, speaking of court cases, federal judge has blocked parts of Florida's new social media law, citing First Amendment concerns over its ban on users under the age of 14. We had a conversation earlier today with one of the co-plaintiffs in that case. We'll have that full interview up on Fox Local here shortly for you to check out if you're interested. We are going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. The future of the Tropicana Field site and the historic gas plant district are up in the air after the Tampa Bay Rays, the team, backed out of the new stadium deal, creating a bit of a vacuum there. That was just the latest step in what has been a long saga, though. And so where do things go from here? That was kind of the premise of a panel discussion last night hosted by the Tampa Bay Times and the Foundation for a Healthy St. Petersburg. A really interesting conversation about a number of different topics. And the host of that is joining us live now via Zoom. That would be Colleen Wright, who's the St. Petersburg reporter with the Tampa Bay Times. And Colleen, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for having me.
So, Colleen, first of all, just kind of take me through. I know it was really well attended. 300 some people there. It sounded like 90-minute long panel discussion. Just kind of talk to me about what you hope the kind of top line of what you hope people got from that.
Let's see. The top takeaway: we had a lot of different perspectives. Some disagreements, but some consensus, and I think it was a well-rounded discussion. I think the big takeaway is that you rarely get do-overs in life, and the Rays backing out of the stadium deal kind of gives a unique situation that you can start over. And a lot of critics and even people who were for the Tampa Bay Rays stadium deal thought that it wasn't a perfect agreement. And nothing ever really is perfect in life, right? But the mayor of St. Petersburg, Mayor Ken Welch, wants to move forward with redeveloping the historic gas plant district, which is in honor of the gas plant neighborhood, which was a historically black neighborhood that preceded Tropicana Field. So he still wants to move forward with redevelopment plans. With or without baseball, the mayor has said that he will not work with the current owners of the Rays, Stuart Sternberg. Now, if the Rays have a change in ownership, he's open to negotiations, but not with this current ownership group. So now that the mayor wants to move forward, what would that look like, and what can be done over right this time, and how should the city go about it? And it was a very interesting discussion. And I think some people say, the folks on the panelists embrace this idea of a do-over and trying to do it right. They want to see sustainability, resilience, that buildings should be built to a category 5. Maybe there should be more open park space. There's this idea of building like a St. Pete Commons, leaving about, I forget, like 35 or 38 or so acres, so like half of the project roughly, for open park space, and then developing the rest and putting, for example, like an African American history museum. You could still have condos and office space and things that still meet the need of St. Petersburg. And people do want to see something there. I think there was consensus of it can be done right, and it can be done well, and it could be done responsibly.
Colleen, you bring up the Ken Welch not wanting to negotiate anymore with Stu Sternberg, the current owner. I thought that was an interesting moment in the panel when you kind of posed that question, and got some different responses on how the panelists got to feel about that.
I also found that to be very interesting, and I felt like there was maybe some consensus there of, we trust the mayor. If the mayor says that he can no longer negotiate with the Rays, then we should trust him. And one of the speakers, I believe it was Jillian Bandy, she's a local general contractor, she brought up that these negotiations with the Rays have gone on really since 2007, when they were looking at a waterfront site where Al Lang Stadium is. That's where the Tampa Bay Rowdies play on the water right now. So really, this stadium search and a pursuit of a new stadium has gone on for 18 years. And so a lot of folks, I think there was a big takeaway there where it's like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine without baseball. We'd love for baseball to stay. But if baseball doesn't want to stay with us, St. Petersburg will be okay. And that site, which is truly, 86 acres of prime downtown land, presents a unique opportunity. The city will be fine. The city can develop it. And there was also the sense of, maybe it was a good thing that the deal ended. And maybe when I say we, the city of St. Petersburg saved itself from maybe a not so great outcome. And maybe the hurricanes, in that kind of lens, were a good thing, that maybe it was a mistake and this was a way to get out of it. And St. Petersburg really doesn't need baseball or the Rays. That seemed to be a theme from last night.
Did that perspective surprise you at all, or did you kind of expect that, knowing this, kind of going in?
I guess it's not surprising. I was more surprised that there was more consensus on that point. Like, it seemed like all the speakers kind of had that point. But it's important. What I think is also very important is that they were also baseball fans. These weren't like never baseball folks. The professor that we had there, Dr. Elizabeth Strom from USF, and she focuses on urban planning and arts and tourism in cities. I found out that she actually writes and blogs for D-Rays Bay, one of the Rays blogs. She's a huge Rays fan. Jillian Bandy, who I just mentioned, the general contractor, she went to the Rays opening day in 1998. She was there. Moselle Davis, who is a lifelong St. Petersburg resident. She's 92 years old, spent all 92 years in South St. Pete. She's a huge baseball fan too. And these were folks that it'll kill them, it'll pain them if the Rays leave. But they understand how things are, how a deal was made. The Rays themselves called it a dream deal when that deal was struck in 2023. And for them to back out, like, something's wrong, something's not working. So it did shock me, I guess, the sense of there were many passionate Rays fans, but there was a consensus of like, maybe we should move on, and maybe there's better without the Rays.
Do you think that perspective may, in some ways, or could change kind of the shift the paradigm, kind of change the framing of the conversation as these things kind of continue to move forward?
I mean, it's possible. You've got the mayor swearing off negotiating with Stu Sternberg further, and as long as that doesn't change, there's a lot of. It doesn't seem like a lot of time, and I guess you could look at it two ways. Like anything can happen at any moment, but also 2028 is not that far away, right? We're halfway through 2025, so we've got 2-3 years left. At any point, the team can sell, but that's a variable that you can't control. And the Rays only want to sell for a high price. They're not just taking any price. And that day could come or it could not between now and 2028. If you have new ownership, I think people do want to see the Rays stay with new ownership under favorable deal terms and under a development that maybe is better or improved maybe from the one that was in place. One of the topics that also came up last night was like, should this money instead go to like stormwater improvements, because so many thousands of homes flooded here in St. Petersburg during Hurricanes Helene and Milton. They flooded during Helene or they were damaged in Milton. So there are other priorities right now too, that after those hurricanes, maybe baseball like isn't as appealing, but at the same time, there was also this sense of there are cities that do regret when their teams leave. And I don't think people want to have FOMO, right? The fear of missing out or regret on that point. But I think it all kind of hinges on if there is new ownership, because the question that I posed specifically was, did Mayor Ken Welch make the right call when he said he would no longer negotiate with the Rays? And the answer was kind of like, well, he should always be open, but we get it. That was kind of in sum, to just generally kind of sum up what the panelists were saying. That was the takeaway.
Well, really interesting conversation. Thought you did a great job hosting that and moderating that. And we appreciate you joining us here today to talk about it. Colleen Wright, St. Petersburg reporter with the Tampa Bay Times. We appreciate you joining us.
All right. Thanks so much.
We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer. We are tracking two different breaking news stories out of Brevard County. Let me pull up on a map here and show you the first one and what we know about it. A small plane crash in the Indian River this afternoon off River Villa Way. That's the pin that you see in the map here. Obviously, Indian River to the left of that pin. We know multiple people were on board that plane, according to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, but not clear the extent of any injuries or anything like that. Investigators still trying to figure out what happened here. Multiple agencies actively responding here to this scene right now, so still very much an active scene, trying to learn more. Very few details into our newsroom at this point. One other situation in Brevard County, and this is in Merritt Island off Borman Drive. You can see where that pin is, right near the causeway. And we have confirmed from the sheriff's office there that a crane collapsed. Again, this is Borman Drive and Merritt Island. 2 workers involved. Don't know the extent. It does sound like that this one is a fatal crane collapse. 2 people believed to have been killed in that. So we are following up on both of those stories this afternoon, developing in Brevard County. So keep it here on Florida Live. If we get any updates in the next little bit, we will certainly bring them to you. Meanwhile, Governor Ron DeSantis is speaking right now in Miami. He's at the Florida Education Commissioners Summit, speaking about some education topics. It is interesting to note, before we hear from the governor here, that the current Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz Jr., was just appointed to serve as interim president at the University of West Florida. And just this afternoon, the State Board of Education confirmed or approved, rather unanimously, Governor DeSantis' recommendation to fill that spot, who is actually his Deputy Chief of Staff, Anastasios Kamoutsas. So some developing news there as well on the front of the Education Commissioner. But here is Governor DeSantis speaking, talking about education at the Florida Education Commissioners Summit in Miami.
You got to make sure to say that it's the best college, but I know that would be controversial in this room. But I will say this, I don't think there's a better college in the state of Florida that serves pastelitos and croquetas and cafecitos. So you guys have that covered, and we're really excited to be here. I also see some new faces from recent things. I see Marva, congratulations. That was interesting to watch. And I know we have our former lieutenant governor that I was just here, Jeanette, and so many others that are, how many of you are, your positions are within the last 6 years? Hand raise, how many? Okay, yeah, so we've got a lot of new blood, and there's a lot to do. Ray Rod highlighted I think the central fact is that higher education has lost its way in this country. We've seen that for many, many years, but I think most significantly we saw it after October 7th, 2023, where universities like Columbia University not only failed to stand up and do what was morally right, but they let the inmates run the asylum. They let their universities really crack under the pressure of some really nasty ideologies. Now, in Florida, I'm proud to say that didn't happen here. People will sometimes say, yeah, you know, why did it happen in Florida? Florida's so fortunate it didn't happen. And there's nothing fortunate, or it's not luck. The reality is people knew if that did happen at our universities, the people in charge of those universities would be out of a job, because we're not going to tolerate that here in the state of Florida. We have a focus on excellence. We have a focus on teaching our students to pursue truth. We want to have, of course, high standards. We want to ultimately prepare our students to be citizens of the Republic. That's a different model than what prevails in many parts of this country and has been very prevalent over the last 40, 50, 60 years, but much more aggressively, I would say, over the last 10 or 15 years. Our model is more consistent with the traditional mission of higher education. We are not trying to create the imposition of ideological conformity. And that's what you see in so many different places around this country. We want our students to be able to think for themselves. Now, there's a lot that goes into it. And so I think that is the central problem that we've seen with higher education. There's a lot of different things you do. Oh, you know, we're going to do better with an engineering school here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Some of you guys have done a lot. I know we've expanded nursing. We've done a whole bunch of good things there. And it's all important. But I don't think if you don't have the solid foundation about what's the purpose of higher education, it's going to run aground at some point. So yes, you can have a good program here, you can hire a good faculty member there, but unless you're built on a solid foundation of understanding why we're actually doing this, I think it's ultimately all for naught. So, but there's a lot that goes into that. And sometimes people ask me, how come these colleges and universities are like this? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And it's not like it just happened overnight. It's also not like it just happens out of thin air. There are incentives that have been built into the system for a long time to produce some of the outcomes that so many people have found objectionable. One of the things that's underappreciated, it's not something that grabs headlines, is how these accreditation cartels have worked to create universities behaving in certain ways. I mean, the whole DE&I concept was something that was embedded in the accreditation. If you weren't doing that, then they would threaten to pull your accreditation. And without that, obviously, you wouldn't have access to federal funding. Now, we have taken on the accreditation cartel in the state of Florida, and now with the Trump administration in office, the U.S. Department of Education, they agree with us on the need to overhaul accreditation. Biden, not so much. That was not something that we got a very receptive response from. But the current administration, so I think we are poised to see a real positive overhaul of this education accreditation cartel around the country. And you think about it, few things are more influential in how these universities function, but have less accountability or less public awareness. Who selects these people? How did they end up in these places? I mean, I remember when Corcoran was the Commissioner of Education, you know, we're doing battle with some of these, like this Southern accreditor thing. And I'm like, who is this? Who are these people? How did they get there? Nobody elected them to anything, and yet they have seemingly a lot of power. We've been willing to stand up to that. So I'm very, very happy with what Florida's been able to do, but there is definitely more to come. The other thing that we've done is people complain about faculty. They're ideological activists. They're doing all this as if that somehow just happens out of thin air as well. No, part of the reason is the way the hiring process has worked. It's geared towards producing more and more of the same, except here in the state of Florida. We have overhauled the tenure laws for professors at our state university. So now all tenured professors must undergo review every 5 years and can be let go for poor performance. If you want to teach, if you want to research, if you want to do things you're supposed to do, you know, you're going to be met with support from the people that run our universities. But if you're there to not do those things and indulge in whatever type of ideological vacations that you may think you're entitled to do, you're free to do that, but you're not going to do that on our dime. And you can go, there's other places that may want you to do that, but not here in the state of Florida. So that post-tenure review has already led to unproductive tenured faculty being processed out, and probably numbers that we have never seen even approaching in the history of the state. But what we've also done and paired that with is an empowerment of the university presidents and the boards to be able to bring new faculty on directly, because you don't want the same faculty to be able to keep good people out because they don't satisfy an ideological litmus test. You want to make sure that we can bring in folks who are going to challenge that old orthodoxy, that stale orthodoxy, and are going to help us recenter our colleges and universities on the traditional mission that they have. So that hiring ability is something that is being employed. It's been very effective so far, but we're really just in the opening innings of that. Of course, one of the things that we had to do battle with is so-called DE&I. They said it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've always referred to it as discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, because in practice, whatever the intention was, some people say it was good intent, other people say, no, actually, this was supposed to be ideological from the beginning. Whatever you think of that, as it was applied, clearly it was applied in ways that were not consistent with the values of the state of Florida. So this is something that really started taking off probably like 2020, 2021. And it wasn't just universities. I mean, pretty much every publicly traded corporation, A lot of really big companies that were doing it, government aid, not necessarily Florida, but federal agencies at the time, other states were doing it. And people were criticizing it, we criticized it, but we were the first ones to really do anything about it. So when I signed the legislation defunding all DEI in Florida back a couple years ago, we were at the tip of the spear. We were the only state that was doing that. Now, when we were seeking to do that, do you think that was portrayed in like legacy media as us fighting for? No, I mean, they were obviously caricaturing this and trying to smear what we were doing. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people didn't want to lean in on these issues, because they know that they will get hit from the political opposition. But we knew we were doing the right thing, so we were able to do that. It saved a lot of money. It's helped streamline operations. But what it does is it really focuses on merit. And that should be at the heart of everything we do in the state of Florida, whether it's who gets hired in a government agency, whether it's the students that they get the best marks in a college or a university. It should be based on merit. We shouldn't be divvying people up by characteristics that don't have anything to do with merit. And so we really led the way on that. What's happened now since then in the country is basically DEI has fallen out of favor. See, a lot of companies have walked away from it. I think a lot of them could be subject to lawsuits by the Justice Department, quite frankly, who don't, the way it's been applied. Colleges and universities, many of them have walked away from it because of really the problems with it. But we were doing that when it wasn't necessarily cool to do. We also, as kind of a partial a subset of that, the courses that are offered, you know, we want traditional meaty courses, right? You know, we want, yes, English, history, kind of the core liberal arts, but engineering, business, science, all those things. All the stuff about where they're talking about ethnicity, gender, you know, racial, that has overwhelmed academia to where that is like the normal thing that you do, and to do a traditional course is much harder to find in many of these universities around the country. So we've worked hard to streamline that. Let's focus on the core subjects. I mean, I know at New College with Richard Corcoran, I know they eliminated some of these departments that were basically more about social activism than they were about academic integrity and high academic standards. And so we've really led on that, and I know there's more to do to be able to make sure that our universities are really offering our young people really sound, rigorous courses. We don't want it to be based on, you know, the latest political or ideological fad that happens to be ripping through the academy at any point. That is not why we're here. That's not what the voters of Florida have voted for over the years, and that ultimately would not serve the best interests of the state of Florida as a result of that. Another thing that I think flows from this, and we've seen great work in Florida, is, and you saw it at Columbia University, you've seen it at some of these other universities, and it's not just the really over-the-top stuff that they did after October 7th, which was appalling to so many people that were watching that. It's even things like if you have a speaker that you disagree with on campus, somehow it's become acceptable across the U.S. to just scream and yell and vote and basically do a heckler's veto, so they're not even able to come and speak their message. Heaven forbid you have some type of a conservative opinion. They don't want you even showing up on some of these campuses, and it's screaming and yelling and trying to drown out. Even things like graduation ceremonies. If there's a speaker that a cadre of people don't like, they'll yell and they'll hoot and holler, and then they destroy the experience for everybody else. And so in Florida,
Governor Ron DeSantis speaking at the Florida Education Commissioners Summit that is continuing now after his remarks that just moments ago in Miami as he spoke. We appreciate you joining us. Time's just about out for us here on Florida Live. Been a busy day. I want to let you know we do have confirmation now from the FAA that they are investigating this plane crash into the Indian River, saying that the two people were on board. Again, from our contacts at other local officials, it sounds like they are okay. So that is certainly good news. At this point, though, we are still trying to learn more information about this deadly crane collapse in Brevard County and Merritt Island. Believed to be 2 people killed in that. We are following up on that here in the Fox 35 newsroom. We appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live. We'll be right back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock right here on Fox.
you.